Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Those that have watched some of my videos or some of the other video reviewers, this is a pen that a lot of us have had high praise about. It's an example of a sleeve for one of them. And yes, it is a Jinhao 51A. So I'd be willing to brand this as the upgrade to the 992, and you'll see in a minute why I feel comfortable saying that. So these three here on the top, these ones with the excellent acrylic barrels, have a nice kind of bent nib. I wouldn't call it a fude, it's bent a little bit more than the Pen BBS nibs. And they also have metal sections involved in this. So these are kind of like an upgrade pen to the normal 51A, which are illustrated by these two here, a solid red one and a clear red one. All of these have hooded nibs. And then we see a transparent green barrel, and then we see this interesting barrel, which is wooden. So this is an interesting way of getting a lot of mileage out of a standard design. I think every one of these has exactly the same cap. So we're going to start with this wooden one because I think it's going to exemplify what I want to discuss in this video. All of them basically have the same type of metal cap. Nice functional clip. You know, with that big ball and that nice space between the clip and the cap, it'll fit pretty much almost on anything. Thick pair of jeans, a nice pen case, maybe a leather one. But when you pull the cap off, you'll notice it has a standard number 5 Jinhao nib. Looks like the same type of nib that's in the 992. And yes, the nib is in an assembly. So it unscrews once you take off the converter. And there's the nib assembly. So this means that you can really swap in a lot of nibs in here, which I've done in my 992 and we may do here. This is the standard plastic section. They all have this standard Jinhao converter, which consistently works well. And what's nice is inside the inside the wooden barrel is a brass insert. So you're not going to be putting stress on the wood when you screw this back onto the section. So I think that was interesting, and a viewer pointed it out to me. I probably would have missed that fact that they've put a new nib in there. Sorry about the shadows, but I just like the intense sunlight. You know, here's a green one with that same nib in it. And you'll notice this one, the nib assembly is clear because you have a transparent material there in the section. So I figured these two would be good to compare the two different nibs and how they incorporate those nibs into a section, which is pretty much the same, except this one extends all the way down to the hooded nib and this one stops where the nib would be. So if we line those up, you'll see that the tip of the nib is pretty much at the same spot. So all these parts are interchangeable except for the acrylic barrels. They have different threading on them and they won't fit onto the standard 51As. So that's where we're at. You know, I've already done a writing example on all of these, but I will explore different nibs on this one. I think I'll work on the wooden one because I kind of like it. It's kind of different. But, you know, I think it's just, I'm very happy to see, Jinhao taking this model, which has a lot of positive things going for it, and creating a lot of different versions of it, with each of them with a little bit of a personality, a little bit of a different look. And we'd be remiss if we didn't let the sunlight play off this acrylic. These two are the same. I think it's called Dawn. JPL, I think, did a nice review on these. But, all the acrylics are going to be slightly different. You know, they just really work well. As I mentioned you, this section's a little different here on this one. I call it an upgraded section. And as we unscrew the barrel, we see there's metal there. So like I said, these sections, these barrels won't screw into the sections on the other 51As. So this is a series of number 5 nibs, at least they're all in the number 5 family. Starting here with Waterman number 2, which I've used in a number of different Chinese pens. Sometimes it works with the feed, or sometimes it fits the feed, sometimes it doesn't. Here's a Knox Broad, which fits fairly well in most of the Chinese number 5 pens, the Dulikes, the Jinhaos, the Wing Sungs. Here's that Schmidt nib I took out of my M100. Here's a .05 nib, which we'll call somewhat of a fine, but these are supposedly stubby. Here's a .07, which is just a medium. Here's a 1.1, which is a stub, a 1.5. And in the end here is one of the nibs I got a series of that aren't marked with the millimeters, but just says it's a fine. If you look at that stub end, it's probably closer to like a 1.2 or 1.3. You know, different slits, different breather holes, different shoulders, a little bit different length. I mean, these here are pretty much all the same length. This is a shorter one, and so is this one. This one came in a Delike nib assembly with the other series. I could have also included a glass nib, and I thought I did, but I didn't do that when I did the eBay order. So I'll show you that auction, and you can decide whether you want to participate, if I can still find it. And this is a little bit different design here at the back end here. So I have a .7 stub in the 51A that we're going to be testing out, and we're going to talk a little bit about how I got that to write. So I put in the .7 stub into the 51A with the wood barrel. I smoothed it. I just wasn't happy the way that it wrote. I mean, this is very dry, and you're not really getting any of that stubby look that you expect from that type of nib. So I used a tool I got from Bobby, which he's selling now. I'll show you where you could buy it. And I just used it. And I've used brass shims before, but this tool lets you really open up the nib. And now look at the flow difference. I mean, this is, the only thing I did was just open it up, and now it's writing the way I expect it to write. You know, day 2, still really good. And here's the standard 51A with a hooded nib, so you can compare the fineness to the other ones. So down below we have a 992 with just a .7 nib that we're calling a medium. And you can see how the .7 stub, once I opened it up, really puts down a lot more ink and makes a wider line than just the medium nib. Again, day 6, we're still doing good with the stub that I opened up. And down here is the 51A with the Bobby one, which has that beautiful acrylic barrel. That's still my best nib to put in a 51A, but I'm just experimenting, playing around with other types of nibs. So this is this nib tool that Bobby's now selling. He sent me this a number of months ago, and I didn't really understand exactly how to use it, but now I do. I mean, this is very stiff material, unlike when you try to use copper to mostly clean, but not necessarily separate the tines. But with this nib, you can get in there and really work those tines. It's not an easy thing to do. Requires a lot of pressure. It's hard to do over the camera, but basically you work this in here and it spreads them out. So that nib, when it was very dry, the tines were very close together. And with this, I was able to open them up. So there still writes well. I mean, there's a little bit at the end, which is what you want. So here we have the writing samples in order of how the pens were displayed. Here's that fine nib, which, like I said, like a 1.3, 1.4 with KWZ turquoise. For comparison, here's a 1.5 millimeter Lamy stub in a B698 with Rohrer & Klinger Salix ink. It's an iron gall ink. And then we have a series of the 1.1 millimeter stubs, which I just love the nib. I mean, if I could only have one nib the rest of my life, I would certainly not be unhappy if it was this 1.1 millimeter stub. A very smooth, good flow. Here it is in a 992 with Robert Oster's Sublime, which is kind of a light ink, but it works well in this pen with this nib. Following that is the 992. Again, so both of these 992s have the 1.1 millimeter stub, and this has the Pen BBS 277, which is Forgive Green, which has a little bit of glitter to it. The Leica stub has a Pen BBS Purple, which is also a little bit of glitter. And here's the 1.1 millimeter stub in the Moon Man, which also has a 277 ink. So you can see and compare it to the Jinhao. The Moon Man has definitely a wetter nib with more flow, a darker colored ink. And all of these pens have been inked for a while. They all write pretty much first time without any effort. Here's this 51A with the acrylic, which is the custom nib from Bobby with a Papier Plume Violet. Beautiful combo, works great. Love writing with the pen. It works well for everyday carry as well as doing letters. You know, the color kind of pops nice. Here's just a 7 millimeter stub that I put into the Jinhao 51A that I had to open it up to get it more flow with the wood barrel. And we have Robert Noster, a Turquoise Rot. So just for comparison, here's the standard nib that's in the 51A, that's in the clear red one. And I like the standard nib. I mean, is it as good as the custom nib in the Bobby pen? No, but this cost $1.50 to $2. This one costs $5 to $7. So it's a multiple in cost, but you know me, any pen under $10, I pretty much lump them all together because I would put them in the very affordable category. And certainly if they write well, made well, they're a great value and a great bargain. And here's that 7 millimeter stub in a Jinhao 992. Which has Great Southern Ocean. So here's two Robert Oster kind of interesting reds that I put together here. And this is that glass nib that I got for a that small, very nicely colored pocket pen. It fits well, obviously, because it's a Delight nib assembly. It fits well into this Delight New Moon that I have. Beautiful blue acrylic. Did a review on this a while ago. Well-made pen, nice it. And the second generation, this one is even nicer. So what I thought I would do is just give you some live writing, just so you can get a flavor and a feel for ink on paper. So this is the 51A that I replaced the initial nib, which is just a 992 standard nib, which is a good nib. But hey, I got a bunch of those, so might as well try something different. It's a nice view of that 0.7 millimeter stub. As with all stubs, there's no tipping material on it, but as you can see, it's pretty nicely rounded. There we go. Need to center that. Doesn't really matter for the writing. I think you can see how nice and wet this nib is. You know, it took me that using that tool from Bobby to open up the tines because it was kind of dry and I didn't enjoy the writing, but now it's extremely smooth and wet. So hopefully that looks nice to you. So here's a 7 millimeter, which is just the normal nib. You can see it has tipping material on it. I used the wrong pen right there. So this is the 0.7 millimeter standard. It was kind of uncapped for a while, so I'm not concerned about that hard start. As you can see, the line is thinner, but this is also smooth and not quite as wet. So I'd say this is pretty well normal flow. But these are two nibs that I can just live with and I enjoy. I think we need to finish up with probably the better of the combos. This is at 1.1 in the Moon Man with the Pen BBS 277. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little journey, maybe appreciate the 51As a little bit more. And they now have a version with a standard number 5 nib, so anything will go. You can stick in what you like, swap the nibs out. The hooded nibs work fine if that's okay with you, or you're going to be stuck with pretty much a fine nib. Or you can get the upgraded version from Bobby, which gives you a little bit more flow and a little bit more character. So we've reached the end of this video. May you have many great writing experiences. Enjoy this phenomenal world of nibs, pens, inks, paper that we have an opportunity to experience. Write on, write every day, write what you want, share what you can. Hopefully everybody can enjoy it. Enjoy your day. Until the next video, bye for now. And I really do love this combo in this pen. It is very nice. Very impressive.